was. So over the past couple weeks, Spoon and I have been playing Humankind. Humankind is a 4X strategy game. It looks a lot like Civ because it plays a lot like Civ. It is a direct competitor to Civ. By no stretch is it not meant to be that. And it is developed by Amplitude and published by Sega. Am I okay? So
Correct.
this is going to be the review for it. So it's not right now. We're still kind of building up to it, but we're going to go over a couple different categories, and then at some point we will show the score, which I'll put on the overlay when we get there. So let me just get something set up here. Okay, let's do this now. So, hello everybody. This is the Humankind review for OverLimit podcast, and we've been playing Humankind for a couple weeks now. The game released. When did the game release exactly, Spoon?
August 17th, so a little more than 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so we're a little bit late on the review, but we got plenty of opportunity to play the game. We've beaten the game several times or played through it plenty of times, and at this point, Spoon and I are confident in giving a score to this game based on several categories. The categories will be overall game impressions, which is similar to what we did before in our Scarlet Nexus review. We're going to go ahead and skip story because there is none. And we're going to talk about visuals, sound, gameplay, and then we'll give a final score for the game. And I'm going to have in the background here playing an IGN video for a year ago, so it's a bit dated, but this is Humankind gameplay. So, Spoon, let's start with you. Can you give us your overall game impressions before we actually get into every category specifically?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, for people who've been following the channel, people know that I'm a fan of Amplitude's games. I think they make really solid 4X games, and I was really looking forward to this one as a direct competitor to Civilization. And yeah, overall, I think it's a lot of fun. I think it, for the most part, lives up to the hype. It's fun. They have a lot of really cool new takes on, obviously it's a historical strategy game, so it doesn't deviate too much, but they have a lot of cool new ideas and new takes on this genre of historical 4X strategy game. The game is absolute for a game of this type. It's drop dead gorgeous. I love the visuals, and the soundtrack is really nice as well. Very calming and peaceful and diverse as well. Great variety in the strategies you can do. Their culture system, where you can basically, there's 6 eras, and you can pick a new culture to play as in each era, which each gets its like specific bonuses, building and unique unit. So as opposed to picking one civ at the start of the game and playing that through the whole game, and your whole strategy revolving around that, this game opts for a much more like varied and um, flexible approach to
Mm-hmm.
where you can sort of swap your strategy around on the fly as you go through it. And then on the negatives, so yeah, that I really like. Overall, I really like the game. On the negative side, you know, the game on release was pretty buggy, unbalanced, and there's some systems in the game that are unpolished and unfinished. This game, I think, is very good on release, but I think after a few months to a few years of patches and DLC, this game will be even better and will be again, I really like it now, but I think it'll be even better than it is now, and like one of the best 4X's on the market, in my opinion, at least.
Okay. As for me, I thought the game was entertaining, which is good. I don't think I was ever bored playing it. The 4X games and strategy games in general, particularly when they're like really refined and complex, they they can get overwhelming. And I was overwhelmed, at least early on with Humankind. I didn't really get all the systems and how to optimally play, and so I was like constantly behind and losing. in games like multiple times. So you kind of, I think my first thing I would say, and I'm not going to say it as a complaint, is be sure if you're playing this game to watch videos, to like do homework, and figure out how to play. Because if you're not sure how to play this game, the AI cheats. So as you get into higher difficulties and you play against difficult personalities of your AI, which we'll probably talk about at some point, they're going to cheat. So they're going to naturally get ahead. And as a result, you need to know how to play so that when they get ahead and you start to push into the mid game and later stages of the game, you can catch up and get ahead of them before they end up just winning and overwhelming you. The soundtrack of this game is really good and the visuals are really good. I do think there are some visuals that I didn't like that much, um, and that has to do with some of the units though, and I'll talk about that later in visuals. I don't think the visuals are perfect though by any stretch of the imagination. The the game has issues though. We had game crashing bugs. Multiplayer in particular has bugs still that I know they're going to fix because they've mentioned it when people have sounded their problems. I think that there's there are some particular mechanics in the game that are just not well developed, and it's very clear that they just either shouldn't have put them in the game right now, or honestly, this game needed to be delayed again another couple weeks to refine those. It just didn't seem like they had time to refine them or forgot to do so. And then I'll talk about that as well at some point in the gameplay section. Additionally, this game I think has a balance issue. I think the Huns are dumb. I think they're a really poorly balanced culture, and I'll explain that in detail with one particular example of why I don't think they're balanced. In combat situations, I think because the AI cheats, they get stronger units. They end up overwhelming all of your other units that may even be able to counter them, and their only counter is a spearman unit, and the base level spearman unit just loses to them. So they don't really have good counters except for if you're playing the Greeks, which I'll talk about. So this game needs DLC and time to get all these things changed. I don't know if the Huns will get changed or not, but I do think they're not balanced. And I think this game is really solid. But to say that it's like amazing would be overstepping a bit. This is a good game. This it's a solid good game though. It's fun. It is fun. There's times when its problems are visible and they kind of
Hmm.
make it hard to like look over them. Whereas with other games you can kind of look past problems. You can't really look past problems in this game. So that's just my base opinion on it. It's a solid game. If you like 4X games, you're gonna like this. If you like strategy games, you'll like it. But there are definitely some problems. So, Spoon, can you go over your opinion on the visuals in a bit more detail?
Yeah, sure. So I guess there's not a lot to say. I mean, you can kind of. I guess this is pretty early, but the again for the graphics are kind of stylized. I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but it's a little bit cartoony, but not in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the I have heard some complaints about the zoom. They don't like the way the zoomed out map looks. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
a problem with it. I think it's fine. I mean, it serves its purpose. It doesn't look great, but it serves its purpose. Um, but yeah, when you zoom in and actually like look up close, this game actually looks really good. A lot of times, you're zoomed out. It's a strategy game. It's a top-down view. You're zooming around the map. You don't pay attention to the visuals all that much, but when you do look in, there's actually some really good attention to detail on this game, with especially in the variety
Mm-hmm.
with the different cultures as you progress through the eras and the different cultures. Every culture, and there's 60 of them in the game, has a unique building for their city center.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you make a new city or a new outpost with a different culture, you'll have a different looking city center. And I think that's really cool. And then when you evolve to a new culture, to a new era, all the other like districts and buildings in your city that aren't the city, well, as well, yeah, those evolve and change the way they look. And I just really love the attention to detail. Um, Yeah, also especially as opposed to Civ, like the landscapes, the terrain features like the cliffs, the hills, the forests, the mountains, they look really good. The natural wonders for the most part look really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think like the water, the ocean looks nice as well. The game is just like a treat to look at, um, for the most part. Yeah, I think the units look pretty nice. Um, and yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about the visuals. I think for a game of this type, it's just gorgeous. I think they did a great job with the visuals and the attention to detail in this game. Another thing I guess I'll mention real quick is if you zoom in really far, you can see these like tiny people and like animals that are like roaming around the map. And if you go with your mouse and like go and try and click on them or stuff, they'll actually like run away from your mouse pointer. It's
Okay.
kinda funny. It's kinda
Okay.
funny. It's just like a weird attention to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
detail thing. It's like, why is that in the game? Who knows? But it's cool and it's fun, and yeah, I think this game is gorgeous. You know, the visuals for this game, actually for me, I actually give a 10 out of 10.
Okay. So for me, uh, I actually agree with you on a lot of things. The attention to detail in this game is amazing. And here's an example of one. It's not even a visual thing to the extent of graphical quality. If you, early on in the game, in the Neolithic era, you then eventually roam around, and when you progress far enough, you can create your first city from an outpost. Okay, and at some point, you'll have to dive into the game to figure out what all that means in the context of the game. But that's how you start, as opposed to Civ, where you immediately just hit a city. Um, it your first set of research options are like there's like calendar, and there's all these different options
Yeah.
to choose from. And if you don't research calendar, you actually don't know what time of the year it is. So usually you'll see this thing in the top corner that's like 4000 BCE or something. But if you don't research calendar, you don't see that, which is like it's really minor, but it I think it perfectly contextualizes how much detail there is in this game. If you don't research calendars, you don't get a calendar,
Yep. You
which
don't
makes
see a
sense.
calendar until you've researched calendar.
Exactly. Makes tons of sense. It's like, okay, I have no concept of time or like dates, months, years, things like that. Like, why should I be able to see that? So like there maybe is a chance you just don't research calendar for a long time and you just don't know. And that's cool. That's a cool visual thing to see. And it's very small, really minor thing. But I personally, when I noticed that, I was like really amazed that that was in this. And it was a really cool thing to discover. I do have one complaint. I agree with the zoomed out map. I think the zoomed out map doesn't particularly look good on the eye. It serves its purpose on finding key points of interest, but other than that, it just looks like a grayish, weird blob, which isn't nice to look at. Um, that being said, it's not horrible. It's not like it's not like the worst thing in the world, but there probably was something else that could have been done here that would have been at least a little bit more interesting. It's just like it definitely is a weird contrast to go from here with this absolutely gorgeous view of the map, really nice like detail in the forests, the deserts, the grass, the plains, and things like that, and then you like zoom out a little bit, and you get this like you get the gray blob thing. Um, I can see why people don't like it. It does some things right though, like you can see topography pretty well, which
Yeah,
is
I think
good. You can see like roads, you can see fortifications, so like it's not horrible by any stretch. But it's like I can see why people don't like it, and I agree that there definitely could have been something different here that might have worked out better. So I will agree with the complaint on that, but it does serve its purpose in that just giving you a general idea of what's going on here. So that is like the other visual thing that I noticed is it really only happens in combat occasionally. The style of the game, and I don't know if this is again an IGN video, so I don't know if they ever go to combat, which is unfortunate because it would example. But um, in combat, sometimes when the units fight, they like they like their like body parts phase out occasionally. Like I don't know how to explain it, but like they end up like phasing out body parts, and it's like kind of weird occasionally. I don't know if it's the graphic setting I was on, possibly that. I was on a lower setting compared to like the other available options because I just like wanted I didn't need the super nice settings. But like occasionally they'll like phase out, and it's a little weird to see that where like their limbs are phasing out. It is a minor thing again too. So and in combat, it's just like weird to see that happen occasionally. That being said, er- all the other details of this game work really well. So I'm going to give it a 9. I think giving it a 10 is like I don't think it's perfect. So giving it a 10 I think is a stretch to say that like I don't think it's perfect. I think there's some things that could have been changed that would have been nice. And while 10 doesn't necessarily mean perfect in every case, you could see where improvements could be made. And like maybe they don't, and that's okay though. But I think a 9 is like probably fair
Yeah,
for
I
this
mean,
game.
I can see it being a 9. I don't think it's perfect either, but
Mm,
I give it a 10. I just think it's like it's masterful. I love the attention to detail. I love the visuals of the game.
mm.
I I can see a few nitpicks here and there, but none of my complaints are like big enough to say that like I don't want to give it a 10. So,
The avatars also look great. I didn't.
yep,
I personally didn't comment on it, but like the avatars as
yeah,
they go through the different cultures too,
yeah,
they look great. There's it's a nice touch. So that's also something to be said. Like this like I could see somebody giving this a 10. I could see somebody giving this a 9. I think if you're giving this under a 9, you're way
yeah.
too nitpicky
For the
for my
visual, as far
taste.
as the
Yeah,
visuals
you're way
go,
too nitpicky. So anyway, that's all I have to say with the visuals. Other than that, I think it's fantastic. So okay, that's the visual section. How about sound though? Spoon, why don't you go through sound? I think sound is going to be short for both of us, but let's go through it anyway.
yeah. Sound isn't like huge. It's mostly just like ambient music and sound effects to go as you play the game. There's a narrator as well. I like the narrator for the most part. I think he's like snarky and funny for the most part, though with the narrator, sometimes he's a little bit too snarky and you're like,
Yeah,
"All right, you're being kind of a jerk now, dude. You can calm down."
yeah,
Like
he does occasionally get like that. Um,
sometimes on the like when you make a civics choice, he's like, "Well, he might as well be saying like, why the hell did you pick that? That was a stupid decision." It's like,
yeah,
"All right,
so
thanks,
sometimes he's
dude."
weird. Sometimes he's weird, but like
Yeah,
not in the worst way. It's like it's a nice like it's a nice touch to have the narrator be different than like a civ narrator.
yeah.
So
So I like the narrator for the most part. Again, he gets a little overbearing occasionally, and there are some bugs where he there was like this bug with when you were being ransacked, he would play a line about
mhm.
you doing a ransack, and
Yeah.
there are some lines that like repeat that will repeat. That ransacking one is one of them. There's another one for if you get to the end of a ideological axis in the civic screen with the ideologies, it'll say like you've reached the end of an ideological axis, blah 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 blah. But then if you like make a choice that takes you slightly off the end of it and then go back to the end of it, it'll replay the voice line. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
we've heard this already. We don't need to hear it again.
Yeah. Yeah, he does that.
Yeah.
um
So there's definitely some like bugs, or I'm not sure if that's necessarily a bug, but it's just like a voice line that's being repeated that really doesn't need to be repeated. I feel like there should be a flag that like, okay, this voice line has played once this game, you don't need to play it. Like, don't play it again. We've
mhm.
heard it once. It's cool. Um, and then, and yeah, like the sound effects are they're fine for the most part. They're nothing special. You know, the clashing of like swinging and clashing of swords. You know, firing arrows, shooting guns, depending on like where you are
Mhm.
in the game. Those are fine. The units have some voice lines for like when you move and attack with them. They're pretty standard. Nothing special. They get pretty repetitive. I guess they could have had a few more,
Mhm.
just for some variety, but yeah, no real big complaints with the sound. I think mostly it's nitpicky. The soundtrack is really good and really diverse with the different cultures. They have this whole video series on YouTube about the different music and like the
Yeah.
different types of instruments and like all the research they did to make the music as authentic as possible for the different like eras and the different cultures. Like some like East Asian styles and some like more like medieval Europe styles and like African and American, all these different styles of music that they have in the game for different eras and different cultures. So again, really good attention to detail again from them on this. So yeah, apart from the narrator being annoying occasionally and some bugs, I think the sound is really good. Maybe I'm being a little harsh, but I'm giving it an 8 here. Maybe an
Mhm.
8.5 is a little more fair, but
Okay.
yeah.
I do have some of the score for Humankind, so I will play it a bit here, and I assume everyone hears it. But this is the main title theme. And then I'm actually going to post this video into the Twitch chat in case anybody's curious to listen to it. There's all sorts of different songs here as a part of the OST. Obviously, we could play this the whole time, but it's I think it's excellent. I thought the music in this was excellent. I thought it was better than Civ for sure. Um, they definitely spent a lot of time getting the various different songs from all the cultures to come together. Whenever you pick a new culture, you get their music from their time. It, it's really good. The effects I think are actually good. The combat effects are really, they have like weight to them, which is good. It makes you feel like there is actual combat happening, which sometimes isn't the case in some games. And I thought the narrator was mostly good. There are definitely bugs where he'll repeat lines that I've noticed, but like it like yeah, he's snarky sometimes, but that's kind of, it's all in the fun of the game. And like it's not always serious. He's definitely having fun. It's nice to have a narrator that's like seems like they're having fun speaking the lines. Sometimes in Civ, I feel like Sean Bean is the narrator in that one, I think, right? And
Mhm.
it's the most recent one, right? And sometimes I just feel like he's saying the line, but not like this narrator is like saying it and is having fun doing it. So
Yeah.
I appreciated that. I I don't have anything else to say. This is good. The sound is really good. I'm giving it a 9. It's really good. I just it was nice to listen to. At no point did I want to mute it. So
Yeah.
I really liked it.
Yeah. It's one of those like a lot of times with games like this, like the music again is very like ambient or like you don't really care about it and like
Right.
maybe you'll have some other music playing in the background like pull up Spotify or YouTube or whatever your music service of choice is and play music in the background. This game, I never really wanted to do that. Like the music was good enough. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'll just stick with the game's music
I
basically.
I could listen to some of these songs outside of the game, which actually
Yeah.
isn't always the case for me. I'm not always that kind of person with
Yeah.
certain things. This soundtrack would be something that would be nice, just nice to listen to, relaxing, like doing like I could listen to this in the car and just like driving. It's good, and I don't always have that with songs, so I really appreciated this soundtrack. We're, like I said before, Spoon and I. Well, Spoon I think can agree with me that there is no story in this game, so we're skipping that, and instead we're gonna move right into gameplay. So let's go ahead and bring up the gameplay one. Um, I want to switch it up. I want to start with mine. Mine's a little bit longer, Spoon. So I want to start with mine. I'm going to try and cut it down a bit, and then I'll have you go because I'm going to try and cut this down a little. So before, when I talked about my overall impressions, I mentioned some of my issues with the game, which I will touch on at the end. But for now, most of this game I think is really flushed out. It's interesting. It's not easy because it took me some time to figure it out, and usually that's the case with games, to be honest. But like once I started figuring out how certain mechanics worked, how like how I could maximize my production with certain strategies, when I figured out hamlets were a thing, the game fell into place, which is really good. It's a really good feeling. Usually I won't say usually, but occasionally there are games where even when you start figuring things out, things aren't falling into place correctly, and that's like a really crappy feeling. And those games are not they're not great to play or engage with for me. But with this game, it was frustrating. But then once I figured it out, it was really rewarding. So I want to give like a positive to that, where once there is a learning curve, but once you figure it out, it's really great. So in my case, I started losing a lot, and then when Spoon explained to me over voice how to actually play the game, um, I ended up winning the next game I played, and I was on the second hardest difficulty. So I was losing early on,
I
but
didn't explain that much. I pointed out a couple of things. Like, yeah, this is like really important. You probably want to focus on
but
this thing in particular.
but those were the missing pieces. So
Yeah, exactly. You had most of it. You just needed a couple of like
exactly
extra things to fill in the gaps.
right.
Like,
So, but that's my point. Is like it sucks when you do something and then like you think you fill in the gaps and it doesn't work out, and those were actually the gaps you're supposed to. It's like things didn't fall into place even when you learned that. Like that's not a good feeling. But this is it's nice to know that like learning the mechanics of the game, like actually sitting down and figuring things out on your own, like it was really. So I want to give bonus points to that. That's like that was an awesome feeling to experience in this game. I really do think that even with the AI cheating, they do that in Civ 2. You can very, I won't say easily, but you can achieve a victory without too much trouble. Um, I like the variety in the cultures. It made for interesting gameplay. I could choose one line of cultures from era to era, and I could choose a completely different route, and I would probably get a completely different gameplay experience. And additionally, I got a different experience from Spoon most of the time as well, which I'll talk about as a negative, but that's good. That's like good gameplay is when you have a different experience from somebody else. Um, I think that's like the most rewarding gameplay is when experiences are different. It adds replay value. So I do want to say that this like most of this game is really well made. There's problems though. The last thing I want to mention is the Neolithic era. In this game, the first era you enter into is the best idea in a 4X game I've had. It's so simple, but it's so good. You got to roam around the map, build up your resources or whatnot, and then maybe get an outpost, and eventually you get enough resources and knowledge to build your first city, which is so much nicer than Civ, where it's like, oh, did you not build your city first turn? You're behind. It's like so
yeah,
stupid. It's so stupid. It's so dumb, and it's not. It's not even close to what I would expect that situation to be. Like, hi, I've landed here. I'm just going to immediately settle. It's not how it works. You don't
did
just
you spawn?
settle anywhere.
Did you spawn in a terrible location in Civ? Too
Too
bad.
bad.
Better settle.
It's like that's so stupid. It's so dumb, and it makes no sense. So I like this one way better. Okay, problems. Faith is faith. I'm just gonna say faith. There's a
Religion. Religion.
religion, faith. It doesn't matter. The mechanic is not well developed at all. You don't get fame rewards, which is part of how you win this game. You don't get fame
The
rewards
only,
for faith.
the only way to win the game.
Yeah, you don't get faith. You don't get fame from religion. Why? Well,
Yeah.
why? Makes no sense. I mean, I don't know if that's like a statement from Amplitude, which, I mean, however you feel about religion and whatnot, it's not the point. The point is this mechanic in the game that feels like it is important as you've built like certain menus around it and things like that. You've obviously put time into it. Why does it not give you fame to do certain religious actions? I don't get it. So I'm calling that a negative because it's very clear that either they didn't have the time to do it, which I'm going to get to in a second, which makes no sense, and or they just don't care, or maybe they just didn't think about it. They just stopped working on it. It's like, no, we're good. This is fine. But
Yeah,
it's just
I don't
clearly not finished.
Yeah, I don't think it's the middle one. It's either the first thing you said or the
Yeah,
third one. They clearly care if you pay attention to this dev team. They care. They definitely care.
right. But okay. Anyway,
I think it's unfinished. I think they like ran out of
right.
time and just didn't have time
So
to finish it.
here's my other complaint: pollution. First of all, it should not exist in this game right now. They shouldn't have it. I was scared when you mentioned before to me, Spoon, that they're adding it about a month before release or something like that. And my immediate thought is, why? Why are you adding a mechanic a month before release? A mechanic that I feel like should be really flushed out. Pollution is a real issue in our society today. And obviously, we're not going to talk about it in detail, but it's an issue in our society today that should be reflected in a game like this. If you pump out extreme amounts of pollution, it should have an effect on the game board, as in maybe the sea level rises. In Civ, that happens. Now, it took a couple DLCs for Civ to get there,
Yeah, second expansion added that in Civ.
but
They didn't have pollution at all until they added it.
that my point is they didn't even put it in because it
Yeah,
wasn't. It was very clear that they either didn't have the time or just didn't want to do it yet. The same thing should be here. Either take the
yeah,
time to put it in and actually do it right, or don't put it in at all and wait. It's a
yeah.
4X game. It's not a JRPG where the game should be finished when I get it in my hands. I actually don't care if there are certain mechanics that you have in the pipeline that do not come out on release. I do not care
Yeah.
for a 4X game.
Don't half-ass it and slap it on top and be like, all
Exactly.
right,
You don't have to have that
yeah,
everything. Like
just
you really
save it
don't.
for later. Yeah,
Natural disasters are not a thing in Civ right away. They added
put
it
put it
later.
put it on the roadmap. We know pollution's a thing. We're gonna add it later. We didn't have time to finish it.
Right.
We'll add it later.
Put it in later. I don't care. Personally, I do not care. But you put it in the release in the actual release of the game, which means you thought it was satisfactory enough to put in there. It's not. It's really not. It's not well made at all. I just like either it has no impact in the game, or in some cases, it has way too
Yeah,
much impact on your game.
it either has no impact at all or it ruins your game
It ruins your
completely.
game,
It's like one or
which
the other.
is stupid. So you you shouldn't you shouldn't you shouldn't have done it. And I'm going to pause right here on this video. This is my next complaint right here. So pollution is not flushed out. It should not have been added. It makes no sense that they tried to add it a month before the game. I knew it was not going to be flushed out, and you know what? I told you so. I told you so because I knew it was not going to be ready. I
I
don't
mean, I'm pretty
understand why
sure
you're trying to do that.
I agreed with you
Oh
when
no,
you said that and we talked about it.
that's an I
Yeah,
told you so
that's a
to
general. Yeah,
whoever
yeah,
thought that they should add it a month beforehand. It's
yeah.
like no, not a good idea. This feels too much of a mechanic that needs to be really well refined and to be in it, and it clearly wasn't. I just shouldn't have been. Here's my third problem because I don't want to go too much further into that one. The Huns. The Huns are a problem. You see this Hunnic Horde unit? This is a problem. Let
Yeah,
me explain.
this is the earlier build too, when it was even more broken than it is now. But yeah,
Let me
go ahead.
explain my situation, which I explained to Spoon, and this is why this unit's a problem. I will give the background, and then I will explain the combat situation, and then I will explain why it is a problem. Background is I was Carthage, or the Carthaginians, I think is actually their name. In Carthaginians,
Carthaginians.
thank you. The Carthaginians, I was their unit. Their special unit is an elephant unit. It's a heavy cavalry unit, and it's an elephant. It's really strong. Under normal circumstances, in open battle, it wins against the Hunnic Horde. It wins. You just trample their armies, and the Hunnic Horde doesn't. They combat it to almost a stalemate. So I went to war with the Huns. I brought my elephants. I had usually equivalent strength or greater, and I would win open field battles. So, and like for me to win those battles, it wasn't like actually simple. I had to like tactically move to certain terrain. I had to move certain units around to make sure, okay, I have to pepper the Hunnic Horde unit a little bit and then trample them? Because the Hunnic Horde unit doesn't take a melee penalty. which makes no fucking sense. It is a ranged unit, even though the range is only 1. It is a ranged unit that takes no penalty in melee combat. Why? Why is that the case? Additionally, there is something in combat called zone of control. Meaning, if my unit is here, and my other unit is right next to it here, zone of control is elicited by the enemy unit. So if I try to move away, I can really only move away 1 square. So unless you actually have your allies next to you in a certain way, you can't just move away that easily. And that actually is on the overworld map as well. If you do the same thing on the overworld map, zone of control is elicited, which is, I think, a good mechanic. It means that you can't just do hit and run strategies, because that's stupid. A Hunnic Horde can do a hit and run strategy because it's stupid. So they ignore zone of control and they elicit it, which makes no sense. It should not be the case. It should be like either you don't actually ignore zone of control, which maybe isn't the right thing to do, or you don't get zone of control when you avoid it. It's just like, it actually is hard to run from this unit too, because they have zone of control. So that's the background on the units. Here's the background on fortifications now. Occasionally, in combat, if you are near somebody else's city, for example, you will see if they have built certain things a fortification. Cavalry units, such as my elephants, cannot go through fortifications unless you siege them, which, by the way, I didn't siege. So let's just throw that out the window for now.
I mean, you kind of talked about it before. The tutorials in the game are very poor, and things are not well explained. So that's kind of the issue. Like, that's the issue. Like, you didn't really know sieging was a thing because the tutorials suck. So
But
there you go.
even then, I don't even know if it would have helped against this unit.
Yeah.
So the fortification exists, and there were 4 fortification squares in my combat scenario. And I had 7 elephants. I had 7 elephants on the field and like 2 archers. My opponent had 3 Hunnic Horde, I think, 3 or 4, and the like base peasant unit that can defend a fortification.
The citizen.
Yeah, the citizen. I forgot what it was. So they had citizens and Hunnic Horde. They had 4. I had overwhelming strength on them. It was just overwhelming. I lost badly. You want to know how? They ran out of their fortification, shot my archers in the face, ran back into fortification. As soon as my archers were dead, I had no way to storm the city. So I lost. Why? Why are they allowed to run out of a fortification, shoot me in the face, and then run back into it? And by the way, I pushed my elephants at a certain point to the back of the combat arena. So they had to have moved. I don't even know if they moved 6 squares. I think they moved. It felt like they moved more. I know it says their movement 6, but goddamn, it felt like they moved the entire fucking map in combat. And that is a problem. It's a problem when, if I'm trying to siege a city in war, and I have elephants because that's the only unit that deals with the Hunnic Horde, and I can't go into a fortification so they can just hide in their fortification, that means I just lose. Even if I siege them, the Hunnic Horde will go around my elephants, shoot the siege weapons, and then run back. Why is that a thing? That shouldn't be a thing. That seems like a horribly unbalanced thing to have in a game. Now, let me add some salt on this wound. I had to deal with the Hunnic Horde in a grand total of all but one of my games. And the one game I didn't have to deal with them, I won. This unit sucks. It's a problem. This unit is a problem. It should be completely reworked. In my opinion, it should just be reworked. They should rework the unit. They need to like put it back into the drawing board and be like, okay, do we really want this unit to be able to do hit and run strategies? Do we really want this unit to be the strongest unit in this era because it can do this, this, and this? Do we really want it to be this easy to produce? Do we really want it to be like you don't need to tech for it or something? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the other thing is, like, almost every other unit, if not every other unit in this era, requires a tech requirement to get to. This unit you get as soon as you enter the era, as soon as you pick the Huns.
Yep.
The other thing is you can build this unit from outposts for influence, and I can tell you from a YouTube video I watched like yesterday, the influence cost is a joke. You can get a 4 stack of these things for like 30 influence or something like that from an outpost.
This is not a balanced culture or unit. This is a problem for me. It has completely ruined the fun of some of my games because the Huns are constantly in my game and they constantly go to war with me. Sample size is a thing. I understand that. I know what sample size is. Don't immediately go. You're sample sizing. Don't
Well, I
tell
mean,
me
yeah,
how.
how many games you played? Like 5 or 6
I
at
played
this
like
point,
five or
though, right?
six.
Like, yeah,
Are you
that's enough.
serious?
I mean,
Every
yeah,
single
it's a lot.
fucking game, I have to fight the Huns except for one, and the one game I don't, I win. And you can bet in the back of my mind, I was thinking about that, being like, when I didn't have to go to war with the Huns or they go to war with me, I won. Yeah, that's sunk in for me, and I did not appreciate that. So, now that I've explained all this, and I've explained the issues, there's also bugs in the game. I'm not, we had it crash a few times. We're not going to go into I'm giving the gameplay in this. I'm gonna give it a 6 because you can bet it pissed me off constantly having to go to war with this culture, constantly losing to this culture because their unit is horribly unbalanced, and constantly wondering why Spoon never had to deal with the Huns like I did. You can bet I thought about that all the time. So it's a 6 for me. It shouldn't be. Frankly, it shouldn't be at all. It should not be a 6. It frankly, if the Huns were balanced, this would probably be like definitely assuming that the Huns were balanced and all the faith and pollution things were actually fixed and somewhat refined. This should be like a 9, honestly. It should be. But faith is not refined, which means this game probably should have been delayed. Pollution's not refined, which leads into me thinking that it should have been delayed. The Hun Accord is not balanced, which means they just did not care to balance it. Or somebody didn't see this coming. And that, like, to me means, okay, there's like, this game needed like another month or two. So this is like that's all I have to. I had to say all that. So I'm giving it a 6 for gameplay. I think it should be higher, but for me, my personal experience, it was a 6 because I'm so
Yeah,
tired of
well,
dealing with the Hun Accord.
80% of your games were your fun was ruined by the Huns, so I understand
So
your frustration.
that is all I want to say on that, and that already took a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add. I echo most of the things that Otto said here. I do agree that the Huns are horribly unbalanced. I did have games where I was next to them. They just never warred me. I don't know why. Like, there were definitely cases where like I had next to no military strength and they still didn't war me, or they're
Mhm.
saying their attitude toward me was like hate filled or aggressive. I'm like, oh, they're gonna war me, and they just don't.
And they
So
just
I don't
didn't, and that
know.
pissed me off hearing that. So keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. Again, I think a lot of the ideas in this game are great. I love the Neolithic era. I
Hmm.
love the flexibility of culture changing and the variety you get in your games through changing cultures, like different combinations you can get. Um, I love like just like again the game looks gorgeous, so just like moving around the map and exploring the map is just like really fun
Hmm.
in general, and just seeing the different like terrain build. I love most of the city building. You know, again, it's not perfectly balanced. I think it could use some issues. I like the territory system, and for the most part, I really like the combat. I think it's unbalanced and unpredictable in some ways. Sometimes it's actually like counterproductive in terms of the predictability. Sometimes you'll enter a combat and it's like you're way stronger, and you'll look and they don't have any reinforcements, and then you engage the battle and they have like twice as many
Yeah,
reinforcements as the game said they did, and you're like, wait, what the fuck? You
yeah,
told me they didn't have any reinforcements, but all of a sudden they have 4 stacks of guys that are coming. Okay, this is actually a hard battle now. What are you talking about?
yeah. That does happen.
So yeah, there's some annoying things with the combat, but overall, I like the combat feels more tactical than Civ is, with like
Mm.
terrain and high ground, as opposed to like Civ most of the time is just like, yeah, you slam units into each other and whoever's units are stronger or has more of them kind of wins, and that's it. And I mean, it comes down to that in this as well, but there are certain cases where you can like make tactical outplays and win battles that you weren't necessarily supposed to win. Like in terms of if you chose like the auto resolve option because it showed that you were at a disadvantage starting the battle. You had like less combat strength than them. You can win them if you play tactically well enough.
Yeah, no,
So
I agree with you.
yeah, and I think obviously we talked about the balance issues, the Huns specifically, and there are some cultures that are just like bad or
Hmm.
just like they're just too niche. Like the British are like they're way too niche. They're like you can't build their emblematic district unless you have a vassal. So if you vassalize almost everyone on the map, yeah, they're great. But other than that, they're fucking useless. Sorry,
Yeah, what the
great.
fuck?
Um,
I mean, like historically relevant, obviously, but
I mean, yeah, it makes sense historically, but like from a gameplay perspective, it's like you're gonna make that niche of a civ. It's like okay, I guess, but um, and yeah, like due to religion being pretty undercooked, as Otto said, like there are a bunch of civs that play off religion, like either boost your religion or your faith, or have you get some yields based on how many followers you have or like your faith. But again, those just feel kind of weak because the religion system is so undercooked, and you just like don't get enough out of it,
yeah, you just
basically.
don't care.
So
Yeah.
like there's one religion civ that I think is decent, and that's the Teutons in the medieval era. I think they're okay, but they're not great. But also their emblematic unit is amazing. So I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah, that matters for
Um,
sure.
um, and then yeah, as you'd expect, with all Amplitude games, but 4X games in general, like the snowballing is crazy.
Yeah.
You see like the graphs at the end of the game, like the like science spikes that you get when you play, the late game cultures, and some of the late game buildings are just insane. So, and what else to talk about? I mean, the AI for the most part is, I think, actually like really terrible. They like in combat, they just kind of like run at you and die. The only culture they're good with, if the unit is a hit and run unit like the Huns, they know how to do that.
Yeah, they know how to
So
do that.
they're really good with the Huns, or there are a couple other units that work that way as well, but I don't think are any as broken as the Huns,
Hmm.
um, or that they don't tend to pick those cultures. Um, that's the other thing. The AI just, for whatever reason, just has super priority on like certain types of cultures. Like the militarist culture, they always pick the frickin' Huns, like first or second. The other ones they have super high priority on are the food ones, like the Harappans in the first era or the Celts in the second era. It's so hard to get those because, especially if you're playing on higher difficulties, you're always behind in the
Yeah, they
early
cheat.
eras, and they
Yeah.
get there first. You just like don't get to play those cultures because the AI always freaking picks them, which is like really stupid. I think either they should pick based on like the AI personality, and I've played with different personalities and it doesn't seem to make a difference. Or it should just be like just make it random. The AI
Yeah.
just pick random freaking cultures, and I don't know. It just
It,
seems like they prioritize the same
yeah.
thing over and over again, and it's stupid.
Now that you mention it, I agree with you. It seems like they just pick the same stuff. Pointing.
Um and another thing I'll talk about is like the fame mechanic as the soul victory condition. I think it's interesting and makes it so that there's a variety of ways to win and like strategies based on like diversity is kind of the name of the game here, and being able to like adopt your strategy as opposed to like civ. Okay, I picked a science civ, I guess I'm playing a science game, like I'm going for the science victory, which is just like that's your strategy from the entire game to the end. This game is much more flexible, which I like. But then there are some areas where, like, if you're behind in fame, it's kind of hard to catch up. Like snowballing is a big problem as far as fame goes. If you get way ahead or you get way behind, especially like if it's later in the game, it's like okay, you're probably lost. There's hardly any way to catch up.
Yeah.
Um,
It.
and yeah,
Yeah.
like you talked about with religion, like I don't know why there is absolutely no fame at all dedicated to the religion system. That is like the religion system could use some tweaks in general, but I think that's the biggest offender with the religious system is you cannot earn any fame from religion. Even if your religion dominates the entire world, you don't earn a single point of fame for your religion dominating the entire world. It makes no sense.
Agreed.
Um, And then, what else am I going to say? Oh, yeah, just as a side comment, I like the avatar customization system, though people are asking for this. I'm not sure I would do this, but people would like there to be you to be able to customize more than one avatar in your game, so you could have more options to like play against. You
Mm-hmm.
can download other people's avatars on their website if you connect your account and all that, which is pretty easy to do. And I like that system. I think it's cool. Um, but the one thing that you don't have, even with like the pre-made avatars that are in there for you to play against and the ones you download, you can't set an AI to play a random avatar. You have to actually pick which avatar they're playing. There's no random option. It just makes no sense. It's like,
Yeah, why
why?
isn't there random? What the frick?
Like, I don't necessarily want to pick all of them. Can I just play random? Okay, thanks. But
Yeah, that'd be nice.
other than that, I think the custom is like the game options are really good. There's a bunch of different speeds you can play on, a bunch of different map sizes, and a bunch of ways to customize the map, which I think is great. Overall, again, I think the gameplay is really solid. I find it really, really fun to just like build up cities and snowball. I find the combat great. I love the city building and the way you like grab territory and combine cities. And there's a lot of mechanics. We won't go into all like any go into any depth, but I think the game is really solid and really fun, despite the again a couple of undercooked systems in religion and pollution specifically, some bugs and some poor balance on some of the cultures, and yeah, I think those are the biggest issues. I'm gonna give the gameplay a 7.5 out of 10. I didn't have the frustrating experience that Otto did with
Yeah.
being trampled by the Huns again and again. So overall, I've enjoyed my time with the game. Though I did have a game where I had to reload like the last 40 to 50 turns of the game a couple of times to try and finish it because I had a weird bug where like I just couldn't like the end turn would just hang and I couldn't
Right.
finish it. But I found a way around it eventually. But the game is totally messed up basically. So just there's bugs, even some completely game breaking ones in
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think the biggest thing, like, they weren't gonna delay it again. They'd already delayed it a bunch of times, and I think Papa Sega, the publisher, was like, "Yeah, you got to get this out. We need to get our money." But this game could have used again another delay till like maybe October or November, give it
Hmm.
like 2 3 more months to flesh out a couple of systems. The other thing, maybe this was a Sega thing, maybe this was a they thing because they wanted to make the thing a little more tailored. But I think this game could have used like an actual early access release, which is what they've done in the past with their games.
Hmm.
Because yeah, again, like, well, this is fine as a finished product. There are parts of it that feel a little beta. You're like, is this really like what you envisioned for the finished product? So
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree with you. There, particularly when you see religion and pollution, you're like, okay, this can't be what you wanted the final product to be. This can't be. So I agree with you there. The other thing is like, besides the Huns, by the way, like the Khmer, holy crap, their emblematic district is freaking stupid. It's
yeah, it's
so
bad.
powerful. Why is it so powerful? It's like if you get to them and you have them as an option, you're just like, I don't even care what I'm doing. I have to pick them. They're so good. Um,
Yeah,
so there's like, besides the Hun like being annoying to play against, like if you get to the Khmer, pick them, and it's just like, holy crap, you just start going. So there's like other balances with districts that are just crazy.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, like honestly, again, if the Huns didn't give me so many problems in most of my games, I'd have said better things. But fact of the matter is, that was my experience, and unfortunately, they kind of ruined it at times. So that's what
yeah,
sucks. Is like I wish they hadn't ruined my experience so many times. So given that as the end of all of our sections we were going to discuss, Spoon, would you like to unveil your score, sir?
sure. So as I think most people can tell, I rather like this game. I think it's really fun, despite a few things. I think it looks really good, it sounds really good, and it's really fun for the most part, despite some balance issues and a couple of undercooked systems and some bugs. I think this game is really solid. For me, it's an 8 out of 10. With a few bits of DLC and patches, it's easily a 9, I think. which hopefully we'll get down the line. Amplitude tends to be very good with like listening to the community, patching things that need to be fixed, and then they do tend to do a good amount of DLC as well. So I'm sure we'll see that actually.
I I agree. I think this game is going to be really good with DLC in time. That is, I am confident of that. I have definite problems. I probably won't be playing this again for a bit because I want to see more changes, more content, and the DLCs. I think when the first like major content push slash DLC comes out, I'll get back in. But for now, I think I've had like my fill of the game, and unfortunately, like my frustrations have just gotten me to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna assume that this game is gonna get more time to get flushed out. I don't want to. I got other games I want to play like Tails. So for me, like given all the problems and with the Huns, honestly, I'm gonna give this a 7.5. I think this is better than that though. I just wish that the Huns didn't ruin my fun. I had this like I think the last podcast was like basically I was like, here come the Huns, and that's kind of my experience with this game. Is I get past the Neolithic era, I get going, and then as soon as Era 2 hits, my brain immediately says, but here come the Huns. And that shouldn't be my gameplay experience. So that's why I'm
Uh,
giving it a 7.5.
Otto's giving this game a goddamn it Huns out of
Pretty
10.
much. I really like this game, honestly, if the Huns weren't a pain in the ass, I'd probably give it like an 8. But the Huns are a pain in the ass. And I constantly have to be like, okay, I'm going to get attacked by the Huns and then get attacked by the Huns. And I've changed the AI personalities too, and it just doesn't change their opinion on me. They just don't like me. And that's, you know what? That's fine, I guess. I won't play your game for a month or two. That's the lesson you learn. So I again, like 7.5, I still think it's a good game with my frustrations. Like when I was having fun, it was rolling, and it was great. So um, I think Spoon, that's all we've got for this Humankind review. Do you have anything else you want to add before we start closing this video down?
I think that's about it. Again, if you're a fan of like Civ or 4X strategy games in general, and are maybe a little bored of Civ or looking for a new take, I think this is a good game to look out for. I'm not sure I'd 100% recommend it at the full price $60 price tag that they are asking for right now, just because there's the game feels a little bit unfinished. Despite me like giving an 8, I do really like it, but you know, I think in a few months or maybe a little more than that, this game will definitely be worth it.
And I would agree. I think it's tough to say getting this for $60 is the right value. I would say if you're desperate for a 4X game that isn't Civ, sure, why not? And you've got some, you don't care that it's $60 out the gate with its problems. Sure, I mean, why not? I think it's a
Yeah,
nice take on the 4X genre. But
yeah,
right now, I would wait for a sale. I think maybe when it gets to be like, yeah, assuming there's no DLC content pushes and it's like the same thing it is today, I think like 40 to $50 is the sweet spot for something it's
yeah,
very clear that this is like it feels like a bait. It still feels like a late beta period for this game,
yeah.
which
It's the
isn't.
same.
It's not horrible, but it's just like
Yeah,
there's some things you just wish were a bit more flushed out.
yeah. At the same time, do I regret my purchase? Which was at, like when you pre-ordered it, it was actually more like 50. There was like a pre-order discount. So, do I regret my purchase? Not at all. I had a lot of
Mm.
fun with this game. I've played about 45 hours or so. I overall I love the game. I just want to caution people against like 100% like recommending it. Like, yeah, jump in for a $60 asking price because again, it's a little undercooked and buggy
Mm.
in a few places. So if that gets to you, maybe wait a little bit for some patches and some DLC for them to fix some stuff. But I think this game will get there for sure.
Yeah, I agree. So that's going to do it for our review for the OverLimit podcast. And if you're interested in all of our other stuff, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube and check out our Twitch where we do all our live podcasts. And yeah, thanks for watching. And if you're playing Humankind and you enjoy it, let us know. And if you're on the fence about it, and again, I think we've said our piece, so maybe wait for a discount. But it's worth jumping into at some point in time when things are really So thanks everyone, and we'll see you in the next videos.